Everyone hits a bump in the road. What do you do with it? Be inspired as we explore the ways people experience, navigate, and manage the ups and downs and twists and turns in this road trip called life. Hi, I'm here with part 2 with Jose Montero, and we had such a great discussion last time. We thought we'd continue this. I was particularly curious to learn a little bit more about some of his treks with trekking for kids, and one in particular in Tanzania really caught my eye. I mean, they climbed Kilimanjaro, correct?
Right, absolutely. Absolutely.
7 days, 5 different climates, a 19,352-foot summit. Tell us about the trek.
Wow, the trek was amazing. It's Kili is the largest freestanding mountain in the world, right? So you say, okay, other people climb mountains and they climb them quickly, but Kili literally it just takes you for a long time to climb to climb it, and it was. It's not a very technical climb, right? So it's trekking on trails. But what's really amazing is you go through, as you said, 5 different ecosystems every day. Every day you go through a different ecosystem. Whether it's an alpine desert to a jungle of Joshua trees that looks literally like something out of Star Trek, to sleeping at base camp, which is very rocky and just under the summit, to the kind of rainforest-esque sort of terrain in the lower elevation. So it's really just a fantastic mountain. There's several different routes, right? Most people would do the Coca-Cola route. We did the Machame route, and which is a little less traveled, but still there's other hikers there, and I think that as in any trek and any high altitude hike, what it really does is it just kind of transports you to a different place, and a different place for you physically, and a different place for you, and spiritually. When I say spiritual, I'm talking about just holistically, right? In terms of just your being, right? I mean, it's different because you're doing something, first of all, that really only less than 1% of the population worldwide, probably less than a tenth of 1% of the world's population will ever do, right? And you're seeing every step that you're taking on these mountains is a step that, yes, you will find others. You will find that those tribes of trekkers who have done it, but those tribes, when you compare it to the entirety of the world population, it's not. It's a very small number, right? So you're very privileged and to do it, and you're very grateful to be able to be there, to be honored doing it.
My friends who climb are all very fit, adventuresome people, and each and every one of them says that the real challenge is within your mind.
Yes, it absolutely is, and it's interesting because the Kili in particular. It's interesting we're talking about Kili in particular because that is probably the trek that taught me that it's in your mind. That a lot of it is mind, and I'll tell you why. Because as we were going up, we had 22 trekkers and about four guides and then a bunch of cooks. So our entire expedition was like 50 people. So every time we showed up somewhere, I mean, we would really just take over the campsites. But as you know, malaria is very common in that part of the world, and there's different strands of malaria. There's a strand of malaria. There's like a pretty severe flu with just bleeding of the eyes and that kind of thing. And it turned out that our guides caught it. And so,
is this contagious?
Yes. And so we were on the medication for malaria, the really bad strain, right? But as we ascended up the mountain day after day, the guides started falling like flies. Up until when we were the summit night, the night that you summit. Okay, you leave base camp around midnight, so that you can get up to the summit by early morning. because you want to be mid-morning, you want to be descending from the summit because all the clouds come in, right? And so that night, about a couple hours before we left, we started our summit push. The lead guide comes up, and it was the only one that was left, and says, "Jose, I'm sick, and I'm gonna try to make it tonight, but I just want you to know I'm sick." And he looked sick. And was his name. And I said, Endemic, I no problem. Let's go forward. So 22 people in tow, and we're climbing. And all of a sudden, about maybe a quarter of the way, if that, a quarter of the way up, he says, "Hey, I can't. I got to go back." So that left yours truly as the lead guide on a mountain that he had never been on.
And it's what, about 30 degrees below zero, right?
It is freezing cold, and that's actually interesting. One of the interesting things one of the big surprises for me about Kilimanjaro was how cold it was. It was by far the coldest trek that I had been on yet. Colder than Everest, base camp, colder than Cotopaxi. It was cold, and I said, okay. So I to this day I still don't know where I got the strength, right, to actually lead the trek on the summit, but also not only lead, but then come back and do the caboose thing and the sweeper and help the people in the back, and then go back up to the front of the line and then come back. And if you've ever been at altitude, that's tough. That's really hard to do because you really have to get your strength, right, going, to go back up. And
How much altitude do you cover on that last part of the climb, on the summit day?
Very good question. You start off at about almost 16,000, and the summit is 19,300.
That's a lot of territory to cover with very little oxygen.
It is. We had 100% summit rate, and so everyone summited. Beautiful. It was a beautiful morning. As a matter of fact, the clouds rolled in earlier than expected, and it snowed, and that had not happened in a very long time in Kelly. So it was a beautiful summit. But that last push, that's where I learned really that there is a lot that is in your head. There's a lot that's in your head because if I would have thought of it just from the physical standpoint, it's mathematically almost impossible that you would just do it on a physical. You would just say, okay, I can physically do that now. You can. It's in your head for a large extent.
So at the end of this incredible trek, you all head over to the orphanage, right?
We did. And interesting, another little data point about that trek. That trek happened in September of 2008. And if you remember what happened in September 2008, the world financial crisis, the world was a normal place when we started at the trailhead to go up the mountain. When we came down from the mountain and went to our hotel that afternoon, we realized that the world was upside down. So a large part of you wanted to go climb back up the mountain and crawl into fetal position, just stay in the mountain, right? So it was interesting because the world changed a lot in that time that we came back. And after that, we went to the orphanage, right? And this orphanage, it's called the Mesa Maria Center, and that orphanage was one that we found that was a very special place and a very hard place to go to. This was an orphanage that there was about 55 children living at the orphanage. They were all rescued street children, and about 60% of them were HIV positive as well. So,
and can you tell our listeners, if you haven't been to Africa, I think it's hard to comprehend just how poor some parts of that continent are.
Absolutely. It is. It really is. Africa is, in the major cities, you will find some of the same commodities, some of the same luxuries, and same standard of living that you find in other Western or developed countries. But in Africa, when you leave the big cities, right, you start to realize, just how you realize how serious the poverty is. You also have you're also immersed in the tribal in the tribal realities as well, right? So there's a lot of Maasai in that area who, even if they had the luxuries, even if they had access to the luxuries, they would rather live their life in the means that they've been living for generations, right? So it's really interesting. But the poverty is really, it's really tough, and it's a tough reality to see. And with these children, for example, these are orphans in the most in the extreme, right? Because they're um, not only have do they maybe not have parents, maybe their parents gave up on them, right? But to them, everything that they've been through and just unspeakable horrors that they've been rescued from, from prostitution to slavery to a certain extent. I mean, you name it. And just living on the streets, the stories that they would tell us. I mean, sleeping on axles of trucks, parked on the side of the road, right? So that baboons wouldn't get them, right? And hiding, from the baboons in the middle of it. Because also you have to remember the wildlife reality of Africa as well. So they're not only are they defending themselves and trying to escape you know the the bad side of humanity, right, and the trouble of humanity, the troubles in humanity, but also just in the animal kingdom as well, and so they end up in this orphanage, which is again 55 children, some of them sleeping three to a bed, and which again leads to all sorts of other complications. Not to mention, they were all boys, right? So fortunately, on the streets, they also they learned that sodomy is a way of ensuring your who dominates who, and it's just terrible. And so one of the things that had been requested was that we provide beds, individual beds for these kids, right? So we rebuilt the orphanage itself was about 6 buildings. We rebuilt 5 of them, including a dormitory. We purchased 60 beds, 60 mattresses, sheets, pillows. Each boy had their own space. They had a cubbyhole. We bought them a cubbyhole too. So they were given a sense of independence and a sense of security that many of them told us that they had never had. They had never had that. And we built a kitchen. We built an all-purpose sort of just kind of exercise room, outdoor gazebo where they could play basketball. We built chicken coops. We built we improved the latrines and the showers, and we built a garden. And so, and we painted the whole place, right? We repainted everything, and this was everything that I'm describing to you. We were able to do with $65,000 that our trekkers raised, right? Our trekkers are committed to raise at least $1,500, but the truth is that they raise much more than that normally, because start sending emails to your network of friends. You tell them what you're doing. The whole idea of trekking for kids, a social impact adventure experience, right, is something that does impact somebody who reads it and somebody who hears about it. They say, oh, wow, these people are, okay, yeah, cool, they're going to do the Kilimanjaro, but they're going to do all of this. So people are fortunately quick to be generous and open their wallets. And then also we take a film, we take a film crew sometimes, but normally now we used to take a film crew when smartphones weren't that prevalent. But now with smartphones, we take videos and we send those back to donors, right? So that they can see, right? And they can see the trekkers literally touching, right? The infrastructure that their money went to, right? So you can see that ROI. And I will never forget that we had one of the things we do as well in these treks is that we have a party for the orphanage at the end of our expedition, right? And we invite the local community for them to come and see the orphanage. So, and what happens there in many cases is that in these local communities, there's also other expats, other people who are living there, who are working for NGOs or some sort of nonprofits, et cetera, who didn't even know about this place because it was in such awful shape before, and they never, they never even went by. They just never went in. Now all of a sudden they're in. They see the facilities that we've been able to refurbish and to build. And they say, oh, wait a minute, who are these people? And so what comes out of that is many times other organizations saying, okay, oh wow, we can donate to this. We can do
Yep.
a more structured donation instead of the one time sort of model that we have, right? And so that happened at that party, and also at the party, at the end of the party, the gentleman who ran the orphanage and who founded it, big, tall African guy. I mean, he must have been 6.5 feet tall easily. I mean, just tall, just all, just this guy's guy, who just breaks down into tears with me and says, Jose, he says, we have been struggling for the last 3 years since we started this place we could bring the kids here, but we couldn't keep them here because the facilities were so bad that they were better off, sleeping conditions, everything. They were better off on the streets, and then we could just come back here and hang out during the day, if that. And he says, you've helped us turn this from buildings into a home for these children.
Do the kids go to school? What is the age range of the kids?
The age range for the kids was anywhere from, it's a very good question, anywhere from 4 years old up to high school. And that's another thing we did is we raised money for their tuition for 2 years, tuition and books and the uniforms. And so they're now, and food as well. So we raised money for them to have food supplies, right? For at least, I think it was for a year and a quarter. And so then all of a sudden the kids had a home, had schooling, and had food, right? As at a place that someone would care for them. And again, it's really it's very, very powerful. And when you do a trek like Kili, which is one of the 7 summits, the highest mountain on the African continent, and it's an amazingly challenging and difficult trek. But at the same time, then you face the reality and the experience of the orphanage and what you've been able to do, right, to help, and you and your donors, and because now you're not just representing yourself as a trekker, you're representing a whole group of folks, right, that are participating virtually in a way, right, but certainly are participating in spirit with you in that experience. It's really powerful. There's and when we send back pictures to donors, it's a multiplier effect. Because folks say, "Oh wow, look at this! This is an interesting way for me to help," and also just to do something very, very different. And you know what? I'll never be able to climb that mountain. I'm not a mountain climber, but I've now climbed it because this trekker has decided to do this. So we take it from the me to the we, and as we talked earlier.
It strikes me there are 3 very interesting expeditions going on: the physical and mental one to the summit, the
Yeah.
emotional one among the trekkers at the orphanage, and then the transformation that the orphanage goes through as well.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. And it's interesting. We tell our trekkers, right, and always the last day is always the toughest because you do get attached to these kids because they're so full of love, and they give us so much. But I also always remind our trekkers, I said, never, ever underestimate the impact and the power of a 5-minute conversation that you may have with one of these children, right? Because what are we bringing? We're bringing hope. We're bringing. You try to put yourself in the shoes of these children. And they're saying, okay, who are all these people who are coming here? And they're like bringing stuff, and they're showing me love, and they're showing me, and they're interested in me, right? And that's because orphans, what are they lacking? They're lacking that sense of love, right? They're lacking that sense of love. They're lacking that sense of affirmation, right? They're lacking, especially those in this orphanage. But this orphanage always sticks out in a very special way for me, just because of just the harsh stories that I'd heard about what a lot of the children there had gone through. And you say, wow, this is bringing them hope. This is bringing them hope in life, hope in humanity, hope in the world, right? To say, wow, not everybody is bad. Not everything that I'm going to run into is bad. Not every person is bad. There are good people out there, and that has to impact a child.
Oh, it has to. It's a game changer. One of my favorite stories is about your Peru trek.
No,
Talk about both the trek, if you would, and then your work with an orphanage for the blind. I mean, this is just a mind blowing story.
yeah, that one is that one was very very special, and I'm so grateful it was our first trek because it really just set the tone. It set a very special tone for who what we were after to do and what we were and it really animated the charism of the organization moving forward, right? The trek, first of all, is it's a very common trek. It's a 4-day Inca Trail trek to the Citadel of Machu Picchu. It's high up in the Andes. You start in Cusco, take a bus or a train up to the trailhead, and then you start the trailhead. And the next 4 days is trekking in the Andean forest, and then up in the mountains, right past the tree lines. And fabulous experience. A tough trek because of the altitude. You start at altitude and it only gets higher. So from an altitude standpoint, you only get up to about in total climb. I think you get up to the highest summit. The highest summit you have to go to is, I think, 16,000 feet. But that's your the heat, the sun makes it challenging, and the humidity as well.
Well, 16,000 feet is nothing to sneeze at. I know from my years of flying, we turn on our oxygen no later than 10,000 feet, and you don't want to be turning it off. You need it for clarity to function. And going through all that exertion at altitude, this is not a slam dunk.
No, 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 it's not. I mean, we had a couple people who had to come down on our second time. The second time we did it, we had a couple people who had to come down on donkeys, our mules, because of the altitude. On the first day, where it wasn't even very high, altitude sickness is very weird. It'll get the person you least expect sometimes. But beautiful, just beautiful trekking through it. You're on the Inca Trail, which was the Inca Highway, right? Which is the highway, the footpath highway of the Incas. And so you're walking on cobblestones that are been there since 1500 years, right? And so it's really it's an interesting flirtation with time, right? I mean, you're in with history because you're among history. There's ruins everywhere, There's ruins everywhere.
Did you stay at lodges along the way? Did you camp?
No, we camped. We did tents. We
Mhm.
did tents the same thing, same way we did on Kili. The guides, the outfitter, just they would, they'd go ahead. You'd show up. You'd have lunch ready. You'd have dinner ready, and it was fabulous food. Peruvian cuisine is just marvelous, and what they were able to make at those altitudes up in the mountains was just amazing. And then the arrival in Machu Picchu is very special because you have to descend into Machu Picchu from the ridge, and you go through. It's called the Gate of the Sun, and you go there and you get there just at dawn. You have to time it so you're there right at dawn. Also, you see dawn, and you see dawn come over the whole citadel of Machu Picchu, and it's just really, really beautiful. Really, really, really one of these sites that you just don't forget. It's engraved in your memory. And then you descend into the citadel, and you spend probably anywhere from 2 to 3 hours touring it, right? Going through all the different buildings. Walk up Huayna Picchu, which is like this little a little small mound that overlooks the citadel as well. So it's beautiful. And then after that, you descend into Cusco on a switchback train, which is actually, I think they've taken that away now. Now it's a regular train, but it used to be a switchback. So you're on this train and it's switching back and forth until you come down into Cusco proper. But then we had the orphanage, and the orphanage was very special, run by the Franciscan sisters there in Cusco. 140, all all blind, and many disabled children.
Where did these children come from?
They come from the families in the hills and surrounding areas of Cusco. The sad thing is that many of them were not born blind. They became blind because of infections, because of a virus that they caught from pork meat. that is prevalent in that area, unfortunately, and it causes blindness in children. And so that it's just very special because when you're these kids are smiling, they're just like any other kid, and the way that they talk to you, they come up to you and they start feeling your face, right? They start feeling your face, and then that's it. It's like they've read it. Their fingers read your face, in the same way that you and I can see each other visually. They see with their fingers, right? And so, you meet one child, and they say, "Hey, what's your name?" "Well, my name's Jose," etc. So they'll come back, and all of a sudden you're sitting, you're not saying anything. They come and they put their fingers on your face. Say, "Jose, how are you?" I mean, it just that would make me cry almost every time they did that. And and just beautiful, beautiful children. Some of them, again, there were some that were blind, deaf, and mute. So if you can imagine, they would communicate by tapping. They would communicate with their hands, right? And the love and the care that the nuns and the rest of the staff there at this center provided was just incredible. I mean, the first year we went, we brought them Braille typewriters, physical therapy equipment, classroom equipment, Braille printers, exercise equipment, etc. And we painted some of the classrooms. The second year we came with 40 people. Right, we rebuilt their entire outdoor kind of little stadium facility for them to play and build canopies so they could be outside because you're very high altitude, so sunburning is very, very common. So we built canopies so they could be outside but not to be protected from the sun, right? And get out and play and get some fresh air. Teaching equipment, physical therapy equipment, light therapy, more Braille typewriters. We added onto the kitchen, added onto one of the main assembly rooms that they had, and really just had a tremendous. It was a very big effort, and what's interesting was one little girl, beautiful little girl. Her name was Rocio, and just gorgeous little girl, and must have been, I don't know, maybe 9 years old or something. And she actually had glass eyes. She had her eyes. She had lost her eyes. And had glass eyes. And this little girl, I remember, she came to me. We showed up at the second time. This is the second year, and we show up, and I didn't say anything. She came. They said, "Hey, listen, the Training for Kids guys are here." And she comes up and she starts. And I was the first in line. And she comes up and touches my face. She says, "Jose," and she says, "Oh my God." It just and where's Ana Maria, your sister, and where's Ana Maria, and it was just, I mean, I lost it. I got totally emotional, and I still do tell them that story many times. But
how can you not? I mean,
yeah,
the stories are just they're incredible.
it's really tremendous. We had we're not we're not a religious organization tracking for kids, but on this one, most of us were Christian, right, and a lot of us were Catholic. So the nun said, "Hey, listen, let's organize a mass." So we organized a mass, and my dad played the guitar, and the Franciscan priest came over, and we had. You should have just seen the kids. And after mass, we were just playing games with the kids, and the same gym sort of space where we had the mass. We had the kids, we were just playing games and relays, and the Franciscans, dancing and singing songs, and just the image of little kids running around, these blind kids, all with Trekking for Kids T-shirts. We give them all T-shirts. The staff, the nuns, the priests, the trekkers, everybody dancing with the kids, just having a fun, wholesome, wonderful time. It's just really one of the best times that I remember. And it's honestly, and just also seeing my father, right? We did the second trek in 2006, and that was his last trek with us. He was diagnosed with cancer shortly after that, and passed away just a little over a year late after that. And so it was very, very special, to me to see it. And it's interesting, we talked earlier about my father and my relationship, and how Trigger for Kids really brought us close in a very special way. I remember on his deathbed, the last conversation that I had with my father was him telling me, "Oh, I want to make sure that Trekking for Kids keeps going." And we've we've been able to we've been blessed or called to start something very special here, and just make sure that you keep that going.
What's coming up in terms of trips?
Well, this is our 15th anniversary. Actually, this month in June was our 15th anniversary, and we had all sorts of really cool expeditions planned this year. We had a trek back to Machu Picchu. We had a trek to Brazil. We had a trek to Bhutan. And our anniversary signature trek was going to be in nowhere else than Italy in the Dolomites. And obviously, coronavirus, the coronavirus pandemic has altered our plans. We've had to cancel all the treks this year, right? Out of prudence.
But they'll get rescheduled.
Yes, and so we hope to next year. We hope to next year do the same treks just next year in 2021, and we'll probably add Mount Aconcagua next year, which is again also one of the 7 summits. It's the highest mountain in the Americas, and it's the highest summit in South America, and it's in the border of Chile and Peru, right outside of Mendoza.
So how can people get involved? Where should they go to get more information about your organization?
Well, the easiest way is the website, and it's on www.trekkingforkids.org, and trekking is TREKKING.
Okay.
Okay. And there the website really takes you through who we are, what our treks are like, what the experience is like. There's plenty of videos, and then there's a whole section that says, our expeditions, and it shows where we're going over the next year to two, and then you sign up and for a trek. And once you sign up for a trek, you have your own fundraising page, and you're able to direct people to your fundraising page. And we have over the years we've had almost, I think, 400 alumni at this point. Trekking TFK alumni, as we call them, alumni trekkers that have gone through our expedition. So it's a growing and just wonderful community of just really amazing people.
It's an incredible organization you've put together out of a bump in the road that started a generation ago with your father in an orphanage. It's amazing.
Absolutely. It really you kind of have to look back and say, wow, this is interesting how life works, Interesting how life works.
Thank you for joining us today. I hope you found something in today's podcast that inspires you along your own life path, because sometimes a bump in the road is actually a portal into a more conscious and meaningful life. Bump in the Road is a production of Cancer Road Trip. Subscribe to the podcast, follow us on social media at Cancer Road Trip, and you can learn more at www.cancerroadtrip.com. Until next time, be safe and be well.